It's the Behind the Shade show.
Do you think sometimes when we go through a traumatic experience, we try to be strong, not only for ourselves, but for other people as well?
Yeah. I mean, my 8-year-old has said to me like, "Mom, it's really hard having a disabled mom." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure it is." And she goes, "Well, you don't know what it's like to have a disabled mom." And I'm like, "You know what? You're right. I don't." And so I just think like having those conversations and validating because that's her lived reality, right? Um, I don't think she has a single friend whose family deals with a disability. So being the outlier, so to speak, is hard on kids because also kids pick on situations that are different, right? So thankfully she hasn't experienced that yet, but like last year I volunteered in my then 5-year-old's class and the kids are asking, "Well, why do you wear a brace on your leg?" And it's like, how do you answer that question conducive to a 5-year-old without like opening a whole can of worms? Like it's hard. But they're just curious. And honestly, like I actually kind of wish people in general would be more curious versus making assumptions or having like bringing their own bias into a situation. I think curiosity is a beautiful thing. Um, but yeah, like I said, having those conversations and trying to be as open as possible because I have AFE sisters who their kids do remember what happened and years down the line, like even dealt with um, suicidal ideation and very severe mental health challenges, or the spouse deals with alcoholism or drug addiction. Like there's all sorts of things that these traumatic experience, which you when you walk in to have a baby, you don't expect to walk out traumatized. And sometimes, like in my case, there's no way they could have predicted this. There's no test. They don't know why it happens. The AFE Foundation's doing a lot of research trying to figure it out, but it takes time. And they're trying to develop a test as well to see if maybe one day we can test pregnant ladies and kind of be prepared for what happens. Because I'm pretty sure my team didn't know this would happen. Um, Something else I wanted to know with the ripple effect is I still keep in communication with several members of my team, and they voiced to me how the AFE impacted them. I mean, obviously 6 years out, they're not thinking about it like every single day, but like the L&D nurse who was the first to do CPR, she in particular, if I message her around um, unfortunately, my daughter's birthday is also my trauma anniversary. But when I text her, she'll say like when she thinks about us, she still gets weepy just because of the way it's impacted our family. And then, the beautiful side of that is the fact that I merely survived. So it yes, praise the Lord. And it does. It impacts these medical professionals, and I am so in awe and have so much respect, especially for my nurse when this super traumatic experience happened, and then the next day she insisted on going back to work. That was helpful for her to process the trauma. Because her team said, "Hey, why don't you take a day off?" And she's like, "Nope, I want to be here. I want to do my job." And that's very admirable.
I will always say that when someone's going through a traumatic experience, one of the best things that someone can do is not only help them to create a space where they can work through or maybe self-soothe the trauma, but be there to support. Right?
Mm,
Like sometimes we need that person saying, Catherine, you got this. Turin, you can do this, right? I love you. I want to be there. I want to support you. right? Some people do it through their words, some people do it through their actions. Some people just stand there and say, "Do you need a hug
I love
right
that so
now?"
much. Yeah.
Right? And I'm glad that you had that support because when you mentioned what your daughter shared about having a mom with a disability, sometimes you can, not sometimes, but you can feel that person's pain because it seems
Oh,
like you didn't
absolutely.
have a mother with a disability. My mother and my father, they don't have parents with disabilities, but both my parents got sick in the same year. So I
Mm,
had to go through that. So when you shared what your daughter said, I can see her perspective. Granted, I'm able to take care of myself, so it's a little bit different.
yeah.
But you're right, because a child goes out in the world and because of just life events, they're automatically different.
Yep.
Whether that's good, whether that's bad, or that's something in the middle. Um, when you heard that, just to go back to it a little bit, did you think that your traumatic experience would have that type of effect on your child, on your first child?
Definitely not. I naively thought when I came home from the hospital, I thought maybe 3, 4 months, I'd be back to being a stay-at-home mom and be healthy again. That was my thinking. I'm like, I'm going to work hard in rehab and I mean, that was the ultimate goal. And obviously, there's all of these, I call them micro goals that, I had to achieve first to be able to even like cook a meal. Um, but, you know, I did not expect this situation to impact her the way it has because, my medical team and my family and myself and my husband, I mean, we were all hoping that I would get back to full health and I would be fine. Um, at the same time, that's not happened. Unfortunately, that's not been God's plan thus far. And I also try to give her, because now my dad is disabled, but it's different when you're an adult and your parent gets disabled. I mean, it's still hard. It's still hard to see him suffer and, be limited in what he's able to do. But like I don't need my dad to make my lunch anymore, or I don't need him to help me get dressed, or I don't need him to drive me places anymore. And, just so I thought at 3 to 4 months I'd be back to being a stay-at-home mom, but then at 6 and 7 months I had a rehospitalization. So that just kind of gives you the context of like I had no idea initially how sick I was. And I'm sure part of that was pride because I'm a very determined, stubborn person. My dad jokes that he gets that from, or I get that from him. And I mean, I think part of that stubbornness is what helped me to survive. And I would love to be able to take more and more and more off my husband's plate because that's all ultimately the goal as well. Because obviously, if I'm taking care of the kids, he can focus on providing for the family. Um, but I try to give my girls space to process because I think a friend eloquently said, like, Claire may not remember you being able to take care of her, but she remembers, and in her body, she remembers how it felt. And I was like, oh, yes, that hit the nail on the head. Because, I mean, when I first got home, I mean, anyone who has a C-section has lifting restrictions. But on top of that, like it was hard to hold her because I have a sternum scar. So like she couldn't lay on my chest. So we did a lot of sitting on the couch side by side and even that at times so it's painful. And when I would cough or had to sneeze, that was painful. And I still deal with chronic pain. So, she sees a lot more than most kids do on how to be compassionate and helpful. I mean, she'll help me put on my shoes if I'm having a hard day, or she'll, I don't know, go get me a water, whatever. So she's definitely had to bear more than most 8-year-olds.